Hello once again everyone. So today we are going to be doing a bit of catch up. So the idea here is if you have been in my classes, this is meant to be a study guide for my open longsworders. And also if you've just been watching the longsword content on the channel, this will seem somewhat familiar if you've seen the basic full body longsword system that I did a while ago. So basically the whole point of this is that's what my open longsword classes have been going through, and now that we've reached a point where we're starting to talk about a new subject, I wanted to go over what we've covered, basically. This is again meant to be a study guide, so I'm not going to go crazy in depth, but I'm just going to cover what we've been going over. So the whole point of this is meant to be, you are learning, right? So this is teaching you the fundamental basics of your longsword. We are using the medium of synthetic because that's what you all work with, and so some things are influenced by that. Furthermore, we are mostly focusing on the idea of fechtschule. However, everything we're about to go over will still work just as fine when you graduate up to full body. That's kind of the idea, is we're cutting that nice balance. It'll work with steel, it'll work with synthetic, it'll work with fechtschule, it'll work with full body, with only really no modification required other than your familiarity with the weapon. So, help me out today, it's Randy. The idea here is we have three types of guards. In this case, we're only going to be going over, well actually we're going to go over all three here, which is we have powerful guards, the ones that we attack from. We have the low guards, the ones that we defend or invite attacks from. And then we have point forward guards, or defensive guards, which that we're going to only be slightly touching on. So, first and foremost, let's talk about our initial couple actions, and from this we get our twos and through cuts. So, going from the perspective of the attacker first. Randy goes into one of the low guards, does not matter, right? From here, I don't need to worry about his sword. I just get the choice of, I'm going to be attacking his head. How would I like to attack his head? We're going to start with the through cuts. The idea here being that I can go from this from any position, but in general, I'm encouraging people to fight from up here a little bit more, get them familiar with it, treat this as a different tool. The idea is from here, I should be able to perform a cut that goes through his head and all the way down. So, if I hit Randy, I'm still bringing it down to low. If Randy dodges and I miss, I'm still bringing it down to low. The only other choice that could be added to it is if I choose from that low to then reload. So what that would look like is I go through and I bring it back to either the top or to a loaded shoulder, which again, I'll get into more detail with that later. So that is our through cut. I am going to go from a powerful guard to the low guard. Now, against this, against the first action we're going to do, we're going to use our position called Iron Gate. Now, what these actually are is these are several different positions. I've given them one name for right now, and they follow this simple rule. With your left foot is forward, Iron Gate is anywhere from tip straight forward to right angle. It does not go behind you. With your right foot forward, it is anywhere from tip forward to I move the pommel to my left hip, meaning the sword goes out at about a 45. I don't go to right angle because that would cause my hands to cross. The idea here is that your hands are always going to be open, meaning that's nice and easy to do pretty much simple stuff that you're already doing. So, with that in mind, I am going to go down into the low guards, and we're going to move through our action. So my tip is forward, meaning he doesn't come at me. When I lower that guard, Randy would be cutting with his through cut to strike my head, and he'll end up in a low guard himself. To defend against this kind of cut, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step out by following my pommel, so I move into a shortened hanging parry. Now, important thing here, this should not become your immediate default. This is only because he is cutting for up here, my sword is low, this is the fastest thing I can do. There's not a lot of point work going from Randy right now, he's just cutting. This is not going to become your default as we talk about it in a minute. So, he goes to cut, I step out underneath that shape, nice big step with my right leg, pulling that pommel out to my right side. I then pull my left leg around, load into a powerful guard of my own as he goes into a low guard, and then I execute a two cut at his head, not a through cut. Okay? So for reference, this would be me doing a through cut. Unnecessary. That was even light, and it went a lot further and harder than I wanted it to. There's no reason to do so. What I want you to focus on here is he cuts down at me, I protect myself, and I'm standing in a powerful guard. If Randy were to do something, I could choose to go to other places to hit him. So all I need to do once I'm here is just extend to target, and that will do plenty. So if I'm going to my right, that's what that looks like. If I'm going to my left, it's that same idea. He cuts down, out, out. It's always the same idea. And I know it's making a nice pop but these are a lot nicer than if I was doing an actual through cut with the shoulder. So that's your pretty straightforward. If they're cutting through, you move out from underneath it, load into a powerful guard, which leads to us essentially changing stances. He started powerful, I started low, we end where I'm powerful, he's low, and then I do a two cut to hit him. As such, the next kind of course that you can go down is we look at it from the attacker's perspective. Okay, I'm doing a through cut, someone has stepped out with a hanging parry, what do I do now? So firstly, it's important to recognize that you are always going to end up in the same position. If you are cutting from your dominant side, which you should be in this instance, I am going to end up in iron gates on my left, right? Hit or parry, doesn't matter. This is where I will be when he's wherever. Because of that, I get two options depending upon where Randy moves. In this case, he's going to spring out this way first, so we'll get there when we get there. So I cut, he defends, boom, okay? My sword has gone low. I get now a choice. The way we have been doing this is that when you defend yourself with a hanging parry from the iron gate, you step away from your lead leg. You can absolutely break that rule, we'll get to that in a second, but this ensures I step the farthest, I get the most defense, and I'm following that pommel. So in this situation, that's very easy for me to do. Randy goes to bring down his cut at me, I step with my lead leg, and I end up striking him. We both kind of walk the same direction. I attack, he attacks, I hit. So we'll go over that again. I attack, he attacks, I hit. Nice and straightforward, nothing complicated. Note also, stay in your low guard until they're actually delivering that cut. You bring yourself up too soon, while we're focusing again mostly on hitting the heads, the hands will be a target later, as will the ribs. And you don't want to be showing that until their sword is actually committed. So, where does this change? Where does this play get a little funkier? Let's switch up this. What I've just done is what's known as cutting the angle. Randy is moving out to his right side. I move out to my left side, going same direction as him, which means that when we finish this action, we both having just cut from our dominant sides, I am delivering a left cut, but I have gotten a lot closer to his outside. I'm basically standing on a 45-degree from him at the very end of this action, meaning it's super easy for me to deliver this cut, and furthermore, Randy will not be able to achieve a second hanging parry. He will have to start playing wider game without me needing to cut from wider. We'll get back to that again later. Right? When he instead goes the other way, so now he was right foot forward to start off with, and I go and deliver my cut. Strictly speaking, I don't have to change anything. If I follow the rules as we talked about before, and I step away from my lead foot with my hanging parry as he delivers his cut, everything's still completely fine, and I can still absolutely hit Randy. However, you'll notice that this leads to us circling each other. If this is your default response, this is still okay, but because of how we're circling, Randy's actually gaining distance from me as this goes on. So it's best to recognize that if you have to circle with someone, or you find yourself circling with someone, you shouldn't stick in it for the long haul. You should let that go and try to exit out beyond them. So to show that again, I cut down, he cuts down. Okay, that's pretty far. Let's go ahead and just call that good, rather than trying to get that hit with a shorter cut. So instead, what I can do, and this is where we get to the whole step away from the lead leg thing, is a guideline, not a rule, is I can instead choose to cut the angle actively. Now this is going to require me to do slightly different footwork, but it's okay because I know exactly where I'm going to be, and for our purposes right now, I only need to do it on one side. So, I go and deliver my cut downward, he defends himself. What I'm going to do is, as this cut is getting ready to come down, I'm going to push my right foot into this hole. At the same time, I'm going to push off my left foot so I get a little advance, and I pull my pommel as hard to my right as I can. Good? Here. Now this is not a terribly big step, but that's okay. Reason being is Randy's not doing a terribly big cut because his hands are crossed, and furthermore, from my perspective, I now get to do a longer cut, meaning if I'm farther away from him, not a problem. I've got plenty of room with which to hit. This is me breaking the rule of stepping away from the lead foot, but it's only because I want to track Randy. This is me realizing what's happened. He is stepping that way. I have an opportunity here. Not, he's cutting at me, oh my God, do what we practice by default. Okay, recognize the time to leave. So here's that again. I cut down, he cuts down, and I hit him. And that's called cutting the angle. And that's our through cuts in this narrow plane from both the defender and the attacker. So what is the too long didn't read? Basically, like always, if you are in iron gates on either side, step away from your lead foot as you do a hanging parry. You only do these against through cuts. We'll get to that again in a second. If you're on the attacker's perspective, if you're cutting from your dominant side, you're always going to end up on your iron gate on your non-dominant side. For most right-handers, this means iron gate on the left, meaning if they go to your left with their defense, you get to cut the angle by default. If they go to their right with their defense, you get the choice. Do you do what you've done normally? I recommend you do that as your default option, or if you see it, move with them, catch them on the flip side. So, let's switch that again. Now we're going to talk about the next option, which is our two cuts. So, what is a two cut? We've already done a couple of them. Anytime we are in a powerful guard as a secondary action, there's no reason for me to do a through cut if I think I can hit Randy, right? If I'm more worried about just transitioning through things, then absolutely I may do a through cut. So for example, let's use this cut again. Randy's bringing a cut down, and as soon as I defend myself, he's just going to get distance, get as much distance as he can. Okay, while I could do a two cut, and I started doing a two cut, as soon as I realized it wasn't going to hit, I don't want to get stuck out here. I let that go through so that I can load back up to somewhere powerful and get ready to defend against what he might land at me. This could even mean staying down here or going here, but I don't want to get stuck in the middle. Now, that's kind of a two cut that you're going to do in general, like I said, secondary action. The other time we do two cuts is an initial action, and this is where we start to talk about the shoulder. Now this is a thing that I say all the time, use it or lose it. As your initial two cut action, this is what this is for, nothing else. The idea here is that it is setting up for my perfect shot. When I bring this to my shoulder, I'm going to push it so that it goes from point A to point B. That's the two cut, right? I am not adding any lift, I'm not adding any torque, I'm not even adding any lateral movement yet. It's just sword, foot, I hit Randy directly. If my distance is a little far, I hit him with a thrust. If my distance is perfect, I hit him with a cut right above his left eye. Straight in. The whole focus on this is that I should be able to load, push, step, hit. And that's all that is. This ensures that I am no longer going at the top of Randy's head, so if he tries to raise his hands or things along those lines, in fact, let's have you try to do a hang parry if you would. So I go through this, there's no energy going downward. Randy has absolutely defended himself, I haven't hit him, but he now has to add juice to his action to actually get away from me, and that's just not going to happen. Certainly not without my being aware of it. As we'll get to in a minute, it's not that hard to deal with. Two cuts shut that line down because they go for a lower target and a more personal target. So, with that in mind, what kind of defenses do we do against two cuts? We have two options. Firstly, let's do this side first. I'm on my left side. When he goes to deliver this two cut, I'm going to step out as I raise up with a false edge strike. Now, what this is all I'm doing is just lifting with my lats as the cut comes in toward me. That ensures that his cut about here gets deflected past me. You can do that in place. I recommend, however, we add our left leg into it for a little bit of extra security. Cool, so I'm here. My sword remains in front of me. I get now three options. Option number one, if the distance is great enough, so let's put myself a little bit further back here, I can just pull my sword down and cut from my right, step forward to my right, cut Randy in the face. Option two, if I'm a little bit too close, I go ahead and pull the sword down from my right, but I step back with my left leg. I step with a retreating cut. Basically, if you cut down from your dominant side, because your hands are currently crossed, you will always end up right foot forward with your right hand. The other option, and the one you're generally going to want to do under duress, is I bring the sword around, loading into that powerful again, then I deliver a two cut. So let's see that one again. My tip is forward so Randy won't come at me. I lower, he cuts, around, out. Always take that time to wait before I launch this cut. If I rush it, not only when he defends himself will I be shit out of luck, but also because I don't need to hit Randy that hard. I've got everything in my corner here. So that's our first defense. Let's switch sides to the next one. Actually, no, let's not switch sides to the next one. That's silly. So, our next defense is going to be breaking the point. This comes from iron gate on your right side. The idea here is that what I'm doing is I'm bringing the tip up. So up to the level of my shoulder, over, and then I'm using a lever cut to extend that point down. This can lead into a couple different things. Because Randy's cutting for me, sometimes I get over his sword really nicely, I break his point to the ground, and we end up here. Option two, though, sometimes Randy has a little bit more spice behind him, maybe he's cutting a bit more direct, things can happen. we end up more in the middle. This is still perfectly fine because I have the angle with my offline step to then make my riposte. Out of the breaking of the point, you are always going to do a thrust. The thrust can look like a couple different things. Here, I can just go ahead and poke it into his throat. If we go back to low, I could again just push on the pommel, poke it into his throat, or if I need to, maybe his hands are slightly higher, things along those lines, I can lift to poke it into his throat. As long as I'm first safe, then I can hit him with a thrust. So let's do that again. Let's take a half step back. Right there. He goes to cut. Cool, I'm safe. Poke, he's not. That's all that is. And I only move my feet if my maximum extension of arms cannot strike him. So those are our two actions against the direct cut. Basically, it's beat it down or lift it up, and then deliver your strike down the center line. So, now let's look at things from the attacker's perspective. What you should feel when you do a good two-cut is that Randy's not actually affecting what my hands do all that much. What he's affecting is where my tip goes. So let's start with the iron gate on the left. Okay, go ahead and take a half step back, because I'll fix that some. When he does this deflection as he steps offline, my hands are still in the middle of me. It's just my tip got knocked off to the side. When we go with the breaking of the point, same thing. My tip just kind of feels heavy, right? But my hands are still here. Now the action that we're going to go over to is we're now going to talk about our third type of guard, which is a parry or a point forward guard. There are a couple different versions, but in this case we're going to go over here. This is your upper left cover. The idea here is that in general, striking from your dominant side, if your tip gets messed with, the simplest thing to do is to pull your pommel back over, in my case, my left shoulder, because that's where my sword is generally going to be since I'm cutting from my right. This brings my tip in front of my face. My hands are uncrossed, meaning that I can apply this defense at several different levels and distances, and this will create a safe barrier. In turn, I never do a cover without movement. Important note, I am not doing a parry, I'm doing a cover, meaning I'm about to leave. So, we'll go over this first with the breaking of the point, as that really exemplifies it. I go and deliver my two-cut, and Randy breaks it. Okay, I identify that he's about to come to here. So what I do is, as soon as I feel my tip has been knocked down, and I've lost the effectiveness, I pull my pommel up, and I combine this with a simple step backward, which puts my sword in the middle of us. This is, again, the same idea as the cover on the left. Now, since he's going to be thrusting, I go ahead and leave my sword tip at about the level of my own waist. This makes a big hanging parry, not unlike we use here, but applied to close one or the other line off. I can't stop Randy from chasing me, but I can tell him where he can strike me. In this case, it's only over to my right side or over to my left side. Combined with backward movement, this is very easy for me to keep myself safe by just directing to one side or the other. So I welcome you to thrust after you do this one. But again, I'm making a cover. I'm leaving. Most people will not chase you more than one step. Do three just to be sure. So, I deliver my cut. I cover. No problem. Because I'm keeping that distance and I even stop before three steps, I can direct that no problem. And slightly ahead of you, tip at the level of your waist, you are safe from thrusts. And since he's doing the breaking point, it's very unlikely that he's going to cut. If he does, you might actually get opportunities to do other things, so we won't worry about it right now. Now let's talk about elbow. So, now he's in iron gate on the left side, and he's going to beat my sword up. This is going to be the same exact sort of idea, but we got to slightly alter things. So I go to deliver my cut, he deflects it to the side, and he's going to bring a cut either down from his right or down from his left. It doesn't matter. Most people are going to come down from the left. Now, I can retreat straight backward. The problem is because he has angle on me, this is actually getting within my parry. Even if I direct my point over, he's got a lot of strength here. He's got a lot of options. His right leg is still in reserve. He can chase me down. So what's better is now we're going to kind of cut the angle in reverse. I'm going to widen the angle. So rather than exiting straight back since he took more offline and is now cutting on a wider angle, I'm going to go that way instead. The way you do it is by following your pommel. So I go to cut. As soon as I see what's happened and I'm waiting for him to actually be loaded, when I see this signal, that's time to leave. If he was still at his sword like over there or things along those lines, then I don't necessarily need to do this. I'm going to pull my pommel out into space and let it follow with my left foot. Now I'm leaving much further away from where Randy is. My tip will naturally swoop between us and I'm nice and safe. Again, it's a cover. I'm not going to wait around for Randy to hit my sword. But if he's going to hit my sword, it's going to be nice and strong, because it's up here, and it's more than likely going to be on the tip, because I'm creating enough distance that Randy can't reach me. Here's that one a little bit more fluidly. And I'm safe. And again, you would take 3 steps away. If you're concerned that they might still be able to reach over, maybe they have a longer blade than like what Randy has or things along those lines, all I do is I modify my hanging parry again. So again, this was the cover on the left. This was how we dealt with the thrust by lowering the tip. Now I just direct the sword over, so from my perspective, it's lined up with my right shoulder. This gives me just a little bit more head coverage, which is good in case they can chase you. So one more time. Other one. There you go. Nice and safe. So, that's our actions so far. So to review, we've gone over 3 kinds of guards so far, 3 examples of 3 kinds of guards. You have your powerful guards, cutting strongly from the top of your head, or the crown as I will henceforth call it. This allows you to do good through cuts, so you absolutely still can do 2 cuts from here. Then we have the shoulder. This is for launching the initial 2 cut, and again, it's only from your dominant side. Don't worry about trying to do this from your non-dominant side. Then we have our low guard. Iron gate on the right, iron gate on the left, and our respective actions against the 2 or through cut. The question you might have next is, okay, but how do you tell when it's coming in? Part of this is just generally you will get used to it. You can generally get a sort of idea based upon what your opponent is going for, but beyond anything else, a 2 cut should feel personal, almost like a thrust, versus a through cut is just going to be they're cutting generally just kind of at you. If you feel vaguely threatened, that's usually a through cut. If it feels like it's coming right here, that's a 2 cut. And of course, there are more things to this. This is just that top pie slice. Basically actions from here to here and all in between. Our final thing we went over is the cover on the left, our high version, because again, that's what we're dealing with right now. So, thank you very much, Randy. We will be going over some more things when everyone in the classes are caught up and I need to make another study guide for it. But for now, that is that part complete. So, thank you very much for watching. And we'll go over some other techniques another time.